Have you ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix? If so, consider sending it my way. Just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. Hello. I've never told this story to anyone, but I've kept it in my mind since it happened in 1998. I just want to preface by saying that I've never held a belief in ghosts, the afterlife, or anything of the sort, either past or present. Even this event is not enough to make me believe ghosts are real. However, I do not have any material explanation for the event. It was mid-August 1998. I was 22 years old and working a summer job at a gas station before heading back to school. I had started college late as I fumbled out for about a year or two after high school. Anyways, on a nice warm summer night, cars would come and go. As we had a full-service pump, I'd walk out of my little storefront for every car and pump their gas. The weather was perfect. Not too hot when normally it would be blisteringly hot at that time of the year. Around the side of the building were the entrances to the bathrooms. I headed that way to use the restroom when I saw two hippie-looking teens with a dog. A boy and a girl. I grew up listening to bands like the Grateful Dead and Fish, and still do. And while I don't present as a hippie, I feel very comfortable in those circles. I could tell that these kids had probably been hitchhiking, and they didn't look destitute, but they were dirty and probably a bit hungry. Even though I was probably no more than 5 years older than them, I felt bad and I wanted to help. I put a few bucks in the vending machine, bought them some snacks and drinks, and I gave the dog a bowl of water. They were very thankful, and the doggo was very friendly. We chatted for a minute, and then the boys said, "The dog's not ours. He was just hanging out here. He was friendly, so we just started playing with him and patting him." That was strange, of course, but not too crazy, right? Dogs get lost all the time. He was friendly and didn't look mistreated, so I just assumed that he had gotten lost. Oh, and he had a collar and tag, so cool, I could find his owner. And his name was Sam. Important to note that he would respond to me calling him by his name, which was Sam. A car pulled up to the full-service pump, so I ran out and did my thing. Last I looked, the hippies and Sam were still hanging out, at this time sorta off to the side of the store, near where I first saw them. I finished up with the car and turned around to head back to the storefront. No hippies anywhere in sight. Nowhere. Just gone. Perhaps they had hitched a ride while I was turned around, but it was only for a minute. When I walked out to the street, I could see quite a ways in both directions. They were nowhere to be seen. This is the last I saw of the two hippie kids, and I hope they're okay. Sam was still there, but it was getting late. I wanted to help, so I decided to call the local police, who gave me the phone number of the animal shelter. I called over there, and the way that it was handled seemed very odd at the time, and still does. But I wanted to help, so I just went along with it. Sam was a good boy, after all. The person I spoke with at Animal Control looked up Sam's info based on the dog tag number, and the person, instead of saying, "Hold on, we'll send out an officer," or even just call the owner, instead gave me Sam's owner's phone number and told me to call them. I called the number and an older gentleman politely answered the phone. I explained to him that I had Sam, that I gave him some water and that he was just hanging out with me here at the gas station, and it was closing soon, so it would be best for him to come pick him up. He seemed perplexed, and he asked me to describe Sam to him. I did. Sam looked like a mutt-lab mix, darkish brown coat, a medium large-sized dog, very friendly disposition. Just a regular old good boy. What the man said next has been rattling around my brain for the last 24 years. The man said, "We had a dog named Sam, but he passed away a good 10 years ago." I was dumbfounded, and all I could do was describe Sam again, to which the man said, "Yeah, that sounds like Sam, but there's no way it could be. It just can't be." He was polite and we talked back and forth a bit more, but with no resolution, we hung up. I was unsure about what to do next, but I quickly realized that there was nothing for me to do. Just like the hippie kids, Sam too was now nowhere to be seen. He just vanished. My thoughts? I would give anything to have this make sense, to be able to actually resolve this in a way that does make sense. I've never been able to. I have lots of thoughts and theories, but as the post is already very long, I'll end it here. But if anyone wants to ask questions in the comments, please do. And thank you for reading. So, at the end of the last school year, my daughter, I'll call her Grace, graduated elementary school. As the kids were saying goodbye to their friends for the summer, some of the parents were standing around and exchanging numbers so the kids could set up times to see each other. One of my daughter's closest friends, let's call her Kate, is being raised by her grandparents. Well, grandmother and step-grandfather. The grandfather introduced himself as Bob and asked to exchange numbers, which we did. I didn't talk to the grandmother as she was turned away talking to someone else, and I didn't get a good look at her. A couple weeks later, we had arranged for the girls to get together. I went to their house to drop off Grace. The woman looked familiar to me, and she recognized me. She had dated a man I knew named Bob, but not the Bob that I met and exchanged numbers with. He was a very close friend to one of my close friends. Let's call my friend Liz. Liz and I did everything together for years, although we had a falling out and hadn't spoken in about 5 years or so at this point. But when we were tight, we were always together, and she moved in with me for a few months after her house had burned down. Bob was a member of her church and a very close friend to her. We were younger than Bob by about 10 to 15 years, but she had a major crush on him, which he didn't return, but still stayed close with her. We went on camping trips together. He was in my house several times. We played cards together. I was at his house several times. So, when I say that I would instantly recognize him on sight, I cannot overstate the fact that there is no way I wouldn't know him if I was standing and talking directly to him. Plus, he would recognize me and would talk to me in a familiar way. So, now the grandmother is standing there reminding me how much we know each other. She dated Bob for a bit. She'd played cards at my house, and I'd seen her at his house. It was just a few times, almost a decade ago, but I did recognize her as someone that I knew. And as far as I knew, she and Bob had split up. So when she mentioned her husband Bob, I thought it was funny that she had married another man named Bob. But it's a common name. And the man I spoke with and introduced himself to me as Bob, like we were meeting for the first time, was not the Bob that I knew. He had snow-white hair, and the round paunch that elderly men get. He was soft-spoken, and he looked like a generic grandfather. He had no resemblance to the Bob that I knew at all. Except the next time that I saw the grandmother. The girls saw a lot of each other, so we saw each other regularly. She again mentioned Bob, and referenced something the 5 of us, her, Bob, my husband, and I, along with Liz, had done together. I was confused. She just said that she married the Bob that I knew. I started asking questions in the guise of just catching up. Yep, she meant the Bob that I knew. She told me that they had split when she started taking her grandchildren in, because their mother was neglecting them and she had to fight for custody. She didn't think Bob would want to start over with toddlers to raise them in his mid-60s. It turns out that he did. He asked her to marry him and raise the children together, which totally sounds like the Bob that I know. But not the Bob that I met at the school and had spoken to, and neither of us recognized each other, which would have been impossible. But, sure enough, the next time I was there, Bob was home. Salt and pepper hair, fit for a man in his 60s, rugged, very distinctive looking. He greeted me like I had just seen him the other day, and spoke to me in the familiar way that I would expect from him. This was not the man that I spoke to at the school and exchanged numbers with. I have no explanation. And no, it wasn't the real grandfather, as the grandmother's first husband had passed away many years before I met her. I stated that he was the step-grandfather at the beginning. I know this is long. Sorry. So, who did I talk to? And give my number to if it wasn't Bob? The number I had been using to contact the grandmother and from which she had contacted me was the one that I got. I wish I had gotten a good look at the grandmother that day because I think she wasn't the same person either. But like I said, I didn't get a good look at her, so I can't be sure. And why would Bob introduce himself to me like he didn't know me, when we clearly recognize each other on sight? This isn't the only really weird thing that has happened to me, but this one's bothering me a great deal. To be clear, they have no idea about any of this going on. From their point of view, nothing is amiss. There was not a different grandparent or uncle, etc. that was there that day, as the biological grandfather passed away, and the other set is not in the picture. And there's no other relatives involved. They're on their own raising 4 grandchildren. It's not a scam. We live in a very small rural town and everyone knows each other. And the girls have a couple other close friends in the group, and the other mother and grandmother, one of the other friends is also being raised by her grandparents, all frequently talk to each other and are constantly shuttling the girls between each house. I will make one note that may or may not have any relevance. My friend Liz knew Bob through church, and the grandmother also attended. That's how they all know each other. They were all very devout and deep into the church and religion, which isn't my scene at all. I made mention of their church, and the grandmother told me they were attending a different church and that they loved, which struck me as unusual considering how into the church community they had been. It would have taken something significant to make them drive 30 minutes to a different church instead of the one in town. Most people change if they have a fundamental difference on doctrine, they don't like the pastor, or there's personal drama among the congregation. Which isn't to say that none of these happened. I kind of wonder if my former friend Liz, who had had such a crush on Bob, had made things awkward for them once they got married. Which may be the case. But it's still kind of strange. Edit. I asked one of the mothers whom I'm friendly with, and a grandmother of the girls' friend groups. There's 4 of them that are close and spend a lot of time together. Both of these women assured me that Bob, the one I have always known, was in fact at the graduation. So, they saw the same Bob as always with the grandmother. The grandmother who was raising one of the other girls had known them for a bit, as their granddaughters had youth group together. The other mom had met them before, but didn't have their number and also exchanged numbers with Bob that day. Now, I was never the type of guy that believed in parallel universes or multiple dimensions, but after a strange experience and years of research, I've begun to wonder about the possibilities of such things existing. And my change in mind occurred after a strange experience 5 years ago. I remember the date clear, 6th of September 2016. It was the day after I had moved into my new house, which I still live in today. It's a fairly old house, and I've experienced many odd things in said house, though those are different stories. The home was built in 1974 to 1976, and was completed in late September of that year. It had a few owners, one of which was my father's former boss. It's been kept in very good condition, and retains many of its original features. In the hallway, the carpet was a dingy yellow whenever I moved it. I had it replaced with a more modern carpet. When I had my experience, the carpet had yet to be replaced. Right. The story goes like this. It was our second day in the house, and our first night in the house. I woke up early, around 7, to help unpack boxes and our items. We were also moving items out of our house which belonged to the previous owner. I was loading a box labeled silverware from our old green car, which was a 1995 Honda Odyssey. The box was heavy, and I lost some grip on the box. Luckily, I have quick reflexes, and I quickly reacted and nudged the box back into my hands, using my knees to prevent myself from dropping it. It was when I looked up again that things appeared differently. The first thing, which was hard for me not to notice, considering the box was in front of my eyes, was the word silverware. It had completely been replaced with the words records and books in black. I was confused at first and just simply dismissed it as my bad eyesight. It was not until I laid down the box on the lawn temporarily to close the car door that I realized something completely different from my eyes was messing up. The car. The distinctive green 1995 Odyssey was gone and was replaced with a red Ford pickup truck. In complete and utter shock, I quickly hurried into the house to find my father. I don't know why, and I have no clue what I would have told him. I'm still unsure why I left the garden to find my father. Anyways, when I hurried into the hall, I spotted a figure walk into my parents' bedroom. He was tall and young, maybe 35 to 45, and was around 5'8". He wore a brown suit, almost like a tweed suit. He himself hurried along down the hall quickly, so I quickly followed this man in confusion. When I walked down the hall, I noticed that the carpet was cleaner, and a stain that I had noticed earlier near my bedroom was gone. Perhaps if I hadn't been in such a frenzy, I would have noticed other changes. Anyways, I swiftly walked into my father's room. It was right at that moment when everything went back to normal. The man disappeared, and boom, I nearly toppled my father, as I walked right into him when entering the room in which that man had entered. We were so close that I could feel his breath. "Whoa, buddy, slow down," I remember him clearly stating. He was just as confused as I was. When I told him what I saw, we both walked outside, and there was the green Odyssey, parked under our willow tree. The box was where I left it, and the car door was open. My father quickly dismissed the situation. I can't explain what happened in those brief moments, and probably will never fully understand what occurred on that warm September day. My father doesn't have an explanation for what happened that day, but he recounts that day as well. From his perspective, he remembers clearing some boxes, standing near the sliding doors of his bedroom, when he saw that same man walking away from the door. I find it odd that the man was walking in two completely opposite directions. He got curious and followed, in which I came storming in, falling into my dad's chest. I've told my family multiple times this story. No one really believes me. To them, it sort of becomes a dinner table story. But I truly believe that I was briefly transported into a different era. I can't confirm it, and perhaps if I had a phone back then. I was 15, and my parents were the type of parents who disapproved of young teens having phones, but maybe I could have taken a photo or two. Whether it was a time slip, a glitch in the Matrix, or just my mind playing tricks, this experience will remain in my memories for years. One of my favorite chickens, Fancy, went missing on January 12th. I saw her outside the day before, and she was fine, and then she just literally disappeared. The Ring camera in the backyard wasn't charged that day, so I wasn't able to see if something happened to her. My husband charged the camera like normal after that because I was so upset that she had disappeared, and I wasn't able to see why because of the camera battery being dead. Anyways, I assumed that she escaped the privacy fence and got into the woods behind our house. I looked for her everywhere, and there was literally not a trace of this chicken anywhere. Saturday night, my husband and I were watching TV in the bedroom, and he went to let the dogs out in the backyard to go to the bathroom. I'm sitting in bed, and the dogs come running back in the room with me because he let them back inside. A few minutes later, I hear this crazy loud banging that scared the crap out of me. I panicked, thinking someone attacked my husband or something while he was still out back. I run into the living room ready to kill someone, and my hubby is standing on the deck with a shovel, beating a possum. I freaked the hell out and got really upset, even though I had told him a few months ago that if we ever caught another possum in the backyard to take care of it because they were killing my chickens. I regretted that so much after he actually did it, and it's eating me alive, but the possum was on the deck, eating Fancy, and that is why he killed said possum. But here's the thing, Fancy hasn't been seen by any of us since January 11th. I checked the Ring camera and the possum was eating her under the covered lawnmower that was sitting by our deck. I was really confused about this because we haven't seen her at all in 2.5 weeks. Her body wasn't decayed at all, so she looked like the possum had killed her very recently. There was a fresh-looking busted egg that had come out of her, so that tells me that it would have had to have killed her around the same day. If she had died and been there for a while, we would have smelled something. The egg from her also wouldn't look fresh because it would have begun to rot, and her body wasn't stiff at all. I looked at the Ring camera to see when she came home because this was just blowing my freaking mind. That she came back home and was immediately killed by a possum after being missing for so long. Like, how? There's no sign of her anywhere on the camera at all. I scrolled our Ring footage from the past 2.5 weeks, and there wasn't one video of that chicken anywhere, and our Ring camera records most of the day and night. It's like she disappeared, and then reappeared already dead. There was no video of the possum actually killing her, and no video of her on the deck before it happened. So, she was there 2.5 weeks ago, vanished without a trace, and then reappeared freshly dead. No sign of a struggle. The day I realized that she was missing, 1/11, I searched all over our yard, including the deck where she was found dead. Under the mower cover, under the grill that's on our deck. I even searched the dang roof, because we have another chicken that likes to get up there and hang out. And I never found any sign of her. The whole situation is blowing my mind. It's like there was a fracture in time or reality, where she was able to come home without being caught on our security camera at all, for who knows how long, and then was killed, and then just reappeared out of thin air already dead. Another thing that proves this theory is the fact that leading up to the possum being seen on the deck eating her, all my other chickens were completely calm and normal in the video footage. In the past, if a predator has gotten into the yard, they all freak out and make a ton of noise, and usually that is what alerts us to something being out there. The other chickens were fine, quiet, calm. You would never guess that one of their flock members was being killed or eaten right in front of them. My dog never heard any commotion or even seemed to notice. It was the craziest thing ever. Also, as obsessed as I am with my chickens, I'm not cut out to own prey animals anymore because I can't handle the heartbreak of losing them to predators, and I also can't handle the heartbreak of killing said predator for doing what comes naturally to them. The end. I work in the kitchen of a convenience store, and every day I bring a water bottle with me. Last week, I had brought my pink water bottle, and lots of my coworkers saw me with it. I had it sitting on the counter right next to the kitchen door, in a group with a few other water bottles from my coworkers. I had it when I started my shift at 1 p.m., and it was there up until 4:30 to 5. A little after 5, I left the kitchen to get some water and started talking to my coworker, who had been working right by the kitchen for a while. As we were talking, I went to grab my bottle, but it was nowhere to be seen. I asked my coworker, and she said that she had seen it when setting a bin down on the counter next to it. I looked everywhere that I could think of and texted my boss to see if she had grabbed it by mistake when she left. She hadn't taken it, and no one had any clue where it had went. So I asked my manager if she could take a look on cameras for me because my only thought was that someone must have taken it. Even though the kitchen door was open and no one in the kitchen saw anyone come near the door, it was the only thing that made sense. My coworker who had been working right there said she hadn't seen anyone nearby either. My manager pulled up the footage from the camera that had a perfect view of the area in front of the kitchen. She started the video at 4:30, and we saw my pink water bottle. She sped through the footage to see if anyone came near the door, but no one did. Once the footage hit 5, she stopped it, and noticed that the water bottle was gone. She replayed it and found the point where it disappeared. Rewatching the footage, I saw it sitting on the counter 1 second, and then it was gone the next. I continued looking around for a bit after that, but eventually I gave up. I haven't seen my water bottle since. So, a few weeks ago I was at work. I work as a videographer for a local TV station. I was at the backside of my work building and loading gear into my car. For context, the station sits right next to a very busy highway. The only other building next to it is a large office building that's been sitting empty for a while, presumably because of COVID. Otherwise, it's just highways and trees. It was pouring rain, and I was standing there at the trunk of my car quickly getting my gear in before it got too wet. As I was doing this, I heard what sounded like a woman talking over a loudspeaker behind me. I turned around in confusion because I was the only one out there. At first I thought it was a loud radio coming from someone on the highway, but the voice never faded away. It stayed at the same volume, which was quite loud. I couldn't understand what the woman was saying. The voice was clear, but the words were garbled, like I couldn't make sense of them. After about a minute, I noticed another coworker drive into the lot and waited for them to get out of their car and start walking towards the door, and I'm hoping to see if they noticed the voice. But they didn't react to it. They walked into the building as if nothing was going on, and even waved hello to me. There was no way that they couldn't have heard it. That's how loud this voice was. My final theory was that maybe the office building next door finally had people in it again, and the voice was coming from there. I closed the trunk, hopped in my car, and rolled down the window just a bit so I could continue to listen to the voice. I drove over to the border between our parking lot and theirs, but when I looked over, there wasn't anyone there. The building was still empty. At this point, I was spooked. I also had a story to get to, so I ended up just closing the window and leaving. But in hindsight, I haven't been able to figure out where this disembodied voice had come from. It wasn't from the station because we don't have a loudspeaker on the outside of the building, and it wasn't coming from somewhere nearby, at least that I could find. The part that confuses me the most is my coworker. Why didn't they hear it? Or if they did, why didn't they react? I've been working at the station for over 4 years, and I've never experienced anything like this, so I'm sure it's not a normal occurrence. Has anyone else ever experienced something like this? So, I'm a college student who lives on campus and goes home on the weekends. I have an Xbox Series S, and I take it with me to college and back. Upon getting to 2 weeks ago, I realized I had unplugged my Xbox at home, but I had forgotten to pack the power cord. I was bummed, but I figured final week was coming up, so I should be studying anyways. When I got home that weekend, I looked in my room, but I couldn't find it. My sister told me before that I left it on the floor after unplugging it, but it wasn't there. I kept looking and found another power cord that I knew wasn't mine because it had a slightly different head. Same type of power cord, but slightly different design. I had never seen it before, but I plugged it into my Xbox and the Xbox turned on. I got the feeling I shouldn't use it though in case the voltage or something was different, and it could cause my Xbox to blow out or something. The following day, I was in my room and saw what looked like the power cord to my Xbox, same head this time, but was completely wrapped up, as if it had just come out of the box, with the little twist ties and all. It seemed like it could be a little shorter, but it was definitely to my Xbox. When my mom got home, I asked her if she knew where my sister had put the cord when she found it, and she said that she saw it on the chair in my room. Same place that I found it wrapped up. Everything checked out. When my sister got home from work, I asked her. She told me she had put it on the couch downstairs in the living room. I was confused, but figured maybe my mom moved it and didn't mention it. So I asked her a follow-up question. Did you wrap it up and tie the cord? She seemed very confused. She said she placed it on the couch just as she found it, which was unwrapped. I never tie my Xbox cord with anything as it's a smaller cord and I can just kind of wind it up like the cord to the vacuum. I asked everyone in my household if they had touched my Xbox cord, and no one but my mom and sister had known it was missing to begin with. My mom didn't touch it, as she had saw it on the chair just as I did. The cord doesn't belong to anyone else, as my dad and I are the only ones with the next-gen Xboxes, and the cords that go to them are identical. But his was plugged into his Xbox. Matter of fact, when I decided not to use the first cord that I found, I took his and used it until I found the other one the following day. I still have no idea how the cord appeared, or where my original cord is, but I'm convinced it was a glitch. So that was this week's collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but they're doing work next door again. And I tried really hard to make sure none of this sound came through any of my stories. So if you hear noises in the background of some of the stories like thump, 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 or whatever noise drills and power tools make, I do apologize. Yeah, they're doing work on the neighbor's place again, and there's nothing I could do about it. And I needed to get this video out, and I was contemplating, thinking, you know what, I'll just do it tomorrow, because they shouldn't be working on it tomorrow. I'm like, no, I don't want to screw up my schedule again, because I've been doing that too much lately. So here we are. Hopefully you enjoyed this collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. I know I did. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. You could subscribe to the channel if you're new, and leave me a comment down below with the word of the week, which is coming soon, a little bit after what I'm about to say. If you want to further support the channel, you can also join my Patreon or channel memberships down below, where for $1 a month or so, you can get early access to all my content like this. Also, there is a thanks button, which is basically a tip to the video, and at least one person has made use of it, and I gotta say thank you so very much to that person. Really, really appreciate it. If you do the thanks thing and I don't respond in a manner that's like super thankful, don't take it the wrong way. The mobile thing doesn't tell me it's a thanked comment. It just tells me it's a comment, so sometimes it's like, oh, this was great. I'm like, oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it's like, oh, you donated money. I should be a little more grateful and a little more eccentric about my comments. So I apologize if that happens. Anyways, word of the week. Last week's word of the week was goal. And it is a goal of mine to continue doing word of the week. That's for sure. And of course, on the screen now and a few seconds prior to now are the screenshots of all the amazing people who left me comments with the word of the week. To each and every single one of you people on the screen right now, and even those who didn't, but maybe thought about it, or maybe just left me a comment without the word, that's fine too. I want to say thank you. I appreciate it. Now let's move on to this week's word of the week. If they stop hitting the hammer on the wall. Anyways, this week's word of the week is honor. Honor. Now, there are a lot of definitions for honor, but we're going to go ahead and use the ones displayed here, which are high respect, as that's shown for special merit, recognition, or esteem, or a great privilege, good name, reputation, or a source or cause of credit, and lastly, a mark, token, or gesture to respect or distinction, such as military decoration. Now, honor is one of those words that might be a little harder to use, just because it's not a word that can be used in a ton of ways. Like I said, tons of definitions, but really can only be used in certain ways. So if you want to use the words honorary or honored, please feel free to do so. Now, all that said, friends, I hope you have a gorgeous day. I hope your week is going to go spectacularly, and I hope that you just are doing good. Just do good. Just do well. Do well and do good. Do both those. I'll see you next time, but until then, sleep well, friends.